Welcome back to a very special episode because today we are looking at something very close to both of our hearts. We are looking at women in STEM. But that is not the only exciting thing about this episode. Ash, tell us why it's even more exciting today.
We've got one of our colleagues, Sarah Mills from Twinkl, joining us to talk about her experiences in STEM, in science. We actually had a very similar role because she was head of science in a secondary school, but prior to that, she was quite an established chemist, which I can't claim I also did.
Yeah, Sarah is the first person, I believe, that we've had as an internal guest rather than our external guest that we normally have. So it was really interesting to find out more about the STEM team at Twinkl and find out what makes them tick a little bit.
I think the conversation itself was a really good way for us to think about why it's important to amplify the voices of underrepresented groups in STEM. This episode obviously is women as an underrepresented group.
I think all of it was really interesting, especially I think this was more of a reflective episode, wasn't it? So it challenged us to think about our own pathways, our own journeys, our own experiences within STEM. The thing that I enjoyed thinking about whilst I was recording this was how I've changed as a woman throughout my time in education, but then through my career as well. Something that we talked about was power dressing. So that was a way of showing authority or showing that you were dominant, confident within your job. I suppose that has changed for me a little bit over the years. I no longer think that I have to dress a certain way to be taken seriously.
I remember when I was in the secondary school as a staff member, and one day I'd wore a blazer. Let's not forget that the majority of men sort of have to wear a blazer as part of their dress code. And this one day I'd put a blazer on and I was in the staff room and a couple of teachers were like, "Oh, you're just smart, you're after a promotion." And I just wanted to look nice.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I went out and bought 10 blazers in all different colours after that moment out of spite. But yeah, that moment was quite embarrassing for me, getting called out for power dressing.
Yeah, and how it has those different connotations, like you're trying to get something or gain something just by wearing, like a suit jacket. I don't know whether there's any things that have changed from you from being a younger woman, especially at the start of your career, let's say, to you now. Has anything changed for you like that?
I'm definitely more assertive than I was. I value my time so much more, and I see a lot of merit in saying no to things that don't benefit really anyone in any way. What about you?
I think I am still working definitely on the no thing. That doesn't come as easily to me, but I have more of an awareness of that now. I think it comes with personality styles as well, doesn't it? It's not something that aligns with what feels comfortable for me, but it is something that I am working on. As well, I don't overthink things in the way that I used to do. I would spend and waste hours of my life if I'd had a conversation and I thought that it hadn't quite gone exactly the way that I wanted it to, especially if somebody was in a higher position than me. I would sit and waste hours of my life playing that conversation over and over and over and over in my head to the point that I'd completely wind myself up all evening. Is something that I've noticed as I'm getting older. I'm able to stop that cycle a bit more. I'm able to put it into perspective of how many conversations has that other person had in a day? Why would I be the only one that they've gone home and thought about? Yeah, I've learned to control my own anxieties, I suppose, a little bit more. I find ways and healthier ways of dealing with that.
Let us talk about how a woman that does that would be described. I think you'd be described in a different way to if a male counterpart was doing that. Like the word neurotic.
Do you know, that was literally on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah. Have you ever heard a man be called that?
No.
I haven't either.
No.
Is it because they don't have those thoughts, or is it because we wouldn't use negative language to describe them, whereas we're neurotic?
And it is something you've spoken about previously, the idea that women apologise and feel they have to apologise for everything. I do it myself hugely. And it was an interesting point that you had about emails, that you went back and scanned your own emails. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I had read a blog or a post online that highlighted how much women try and soften themselves by using the word just. So if someone hasn't done something on time that they should have done, "Hi, I'm just checking." Or if you want to ask a question a second time because
Just
someone Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
asking again. No,
Mhm.
and I remember saying to you, delete the word just from that message,
Yeah.
as though I was sort of all liberating when I've only just taken that mantra myself in 2026.
But since we've had that conversation, I have realized how often we do it. Like I do it.
Yeah,
I do it in every emails. Hello, I'm just checking in. I'm just
yeah,
following up about, I'm just doing this. And you're right. It's not because I'm behind or, missed a deadline or something else. I'm placating what, the behaviors around it. Or there's no
yeah.
just about it.
Abolish the word just, please.
Yeah.
So,
To just.
let's reel it back to women in STEM, or women scientists, I think is the flavour of our chat today.
Mhm.
Have you heard of the Matilda effect?
I have heard of the Matilda effect, but do explain it to me again just to refresh memory.
So, the Matilda effect is where women scientists have their work or their discoveries or findings, either the credit taken from them
Mhm.
or they don't get the recognition they deserve for something that they've worked on. And the one that I think is the most prominent that we probably touch on in secondary science is Rosalind Franklin. So
Mhm.
she is responsible for photo 51 or picture 51, which shows the shape of DNA as a double helix.
Mhm.
And her work was passed on to two men that are actually in the national curriculum, Watson and Crick, and they won a Nobel Prize for their work on DNA. They won the Nobel Prize after she'd sadly passed away, and she didn't get any credit for this. And had it not been for her, they would have never made the advances that they had made. She is an example of someone who was affected by the Matilda effect.
There are so many examples that I could think about as well. There is one that comes up a lot within primary science, so
Mhm,
taking it to that lens. Mary Anning. So up
mhm.
until quite recently, she was relatively unknown. She was a fossil hunter and found some incredible skeletons that have really influenced our understanding of prehistoric life. At the time, lots of males would buy the fossils that she found from her. So she'd find them, she'd clean them, etc., prepare
Oh,
them. But then the males would buy them off her, but not credit her discoveries within any scientific papers, even when writing about her findings specifically. They
wow.
wouldn't credit her or her work within that at all. Even the Geological Society of London completely refused to admit her, even though she'd discovered all these things, because they didn't allow women to become fellows until 1908. So, yeah, another victim of the Matilda effect.
Wow. Sometimes we don't realise how far we have come, do we? Shall we have a listen at what Sarah's got to say?
Yeah, sounds great. Hello and welcome to STEM Conversations, a podcast created to share stories, ideas, and experiences shaping science, technology, engineering, and maths. I'm Sarah and I'm joined by my co host Ash.
Hi. Today we're joined by our colleague, Sarah Mills. Sarah has worked as a laboratory assistant, an analytical chemist at AstraZeneca, and head of science before moving into her current role as Beyond Segment Manager at Twinkl. Sarah, welcome.
Thanks, Ash. Thanks, Sarah. Hi. Yeah, it's really nice to be here. I'm honoured to be asked to be on this STEMinist special.
Hey.
Oh, I love that. I love STEMinist Special. Thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to speak with us today. As Sarah has alluded to, it is a bit of a STEMinist Special because we are celebrating women in STEM. We're going to be exploring your personal journey, the challenges and stereotypes that you might have encountered, the importance of role models and representation, and how we can create a more inclusive environment for future generations. So no small task, really. Just to start us off, what have you been working on recently and what's exciting you most in your career right now?
Oh, okay. Well, being the Beyond segment manager, I oversee, yes, the science, but I also work with the English team, the geography, PSHE, and maths. Obviously, I've got a bit of a preference for the science. I have been really excited by the key stage 3 units of work that have been coming through. I just think they look brilliant. I certainly used Twinkl resources when I was in the classroom, and I'm really proud to be utilizing these and promoting these. And the required practicals that Ash,
Hey.
your ones that you hand draw and you lead with those. I really like those because I just know if I was in the classroom, I would have snapped those up. I would have been using those for booster sessions, left, right, and centre. So I am really proud of what we purvey in the beyond secondary categories.
That's funny because, Sarah, it was you that prompted me to do that series when you said, "Oh, I think people might find this useful." Then I just got so carried away and then bought a tripod and started filming and all sorts, which I don't think is what you quite were suggesting.
Always like a tripod. I'm a chemist at heart, so
Can you tell us about your personal journey into STEM and the early interests or influences that drew you in?
yeah, sure. So I live near Loughborough, the university town. At school, I was really into art, design, English literature. They were the subjects I was good at. But even as a sort of teenager, I thought, I don't know, I live in a town with lots of university influence and lots of labs. I thought I could probably definitely get a job if I went down the science route, which is really practical for a teenager to think like that. And it's not
Mhm.
anything that I've carried forward in my life being that sort of practical. But yeah, 17-year-old me was like all about getting gainful employment, apparently. So I chose to do science at A level. I worked for a company who did well, it was called day release. You'd work 4 days a week, and on one
Mhm.
day a week, which happened to be a Tuesday, I did my degree with Nottingham Trent Uni. And just it was like, 12-hour days. I mean, it was pretty
Wow.
hardcore. And then I ended up doing my chemistry degree over 5 years, which, yeah, I'd really recommend because you didn't get any student debt. So, yeah, it was good. I suppose it's a bit like an apprenticeship.
That's what I was thinking while you were saying it, a little bit like an apprenticeship, actually, where they sort of support you through your learning while you're on the job.
I did get through my degree and they paid for my degree and everything. And then that's when I started working at 3M. And then after
Yeah.
that, I went to go and work for AstraZeneca. So, I mean, I got within my first 2 years of graduating, I'd worked for 7 years in various tech companies, which is pretty good going on the old CV.
I was thinking about your CV. It will look golden.
Yeah, so yeah, it's good. Also, another benefit of it is when it was coursework time, I was just surrounded by chemists, so they would like help me with my homework.
Yeah, work.
They were like, yeah. They'd be like just a mini
No.
Sudoku for them. It'd be like nightmare coursework for me, and they'd just be like, "Oh, yeah."
Have you encountered any challenges as a woman in STEM, like particularly within the education sector?
Well, I think in the actual like science sector, I'd still say it's quite heavily weighted as men versus women.
Mhm.
And what I've noticed along my travels through science labs over the years is physics tends to be male dominated, biology a little bit more female dominated, and chemistry is just right. It's like a nice 50-50 of each, like Goldilocks and the three sciences, I like to think of it.
Yeah.
But I think people will assume if you're younger that
Mhm.
you don't know as much. And one thing I did start doing at a certain school was I started power dressing really and wearing
Okay.
pencil skirts and blazers and like heels. And I did find out of anything I ever did, that did give me more like oomph, commanded more respect. I did find
Yeah.
that.
I always used to say, "Oh, I never actually faced any sort of challenges as a woman." But then I moved somewhere else and I realised it was just because I was established in the school that I was well respected. It was nothing to do with whether I was a man or a woman. When I moved somewhere
Yeah.
new, I realised I was treated very differently based on the way that I look. I used to get so frustrated that people didn't believe I was intelligent just because they looked at me.
Do you feel like perhaps your ideas aren't taken as seriously?
Mhm.
Which, considering by the time I was teaching, I'd had like 7 years of industry experience under my belt, which is more than anyone I worked in the school with had had. I did have some credible ideas because another thing, of course, is technology and ideas that you have in a school because of school budgets. It probably lags behind like the professional setting by about 10 or 15 years. Stuff that I was using probably has only just made it into the classroom now. So it's like I think I did know what I was on about. And I look back and I think, yeah, I did know what I was on about because I've been doing it.
Did you find that even though you knew what you were on about, you just stopped saying it because you thought, "Oh, okay, no one believes me."
Oh yeah. Like I think that's a being younger thing. Or not being as confident when you're younger thing. Just like folding over. Just folding over and not standing your ground a bit.
We spoke to two young co-founders of a business, and they said that it's kind of shifted for them. So they first felt like the youngest in the room, and therefore they were trying to fit in with everybody else. But now what they do is they've changed that and think about ways that they can stand out. So they're engineers, so they might wear boiler suits.
Oh,
It-
cool.
So I do think that like the power of clothing or the power of how you look or how you present yourself has a massive impact on things.
Yeah, I suppose it's got a quite direct impact on how confident you feel, which is probably the overarching issue of it all. Yeah.
We've already touched on this a little bit, but thinking back to your early school years, how did you feel about STEM subjects?
Okay, so when I was at school, my peers and all of my friends were boys. Like back then, you'd say it was like I've sort of a tomboy. I had friends who had gone on to Cambridge to do natural sciences, so I was with really clever kids, just really gifted scientists. But I suppose I always felt a little bit inferior with my science knowledge because I didn't have that kind of edge. But what I did
Mhm.
have was, I guess, more like softer skills, like more social skills, which as I progressed into the science world and working in labs, I actually found out it's quite a good boon to be decent at science but have good social skills because you
Yeah.
can convey messages, you can get the ideas off the ground. So I think you need different personality types to be able to make ideas get somewhere. How do you know if a chemist is an extrovert?
Go on.
They look at your shoes when they talk rather than their own.
Ba-dum-tsh.
Having a mix of people is really important in any workplace.
It brings me back to when I was in the classroom and when we had trainee teachers, you could tell in the first few weeks when you were observing which ones had come from the more academic background and which ones had absolutely fought their way in there with like the practical side, because
Yeah,
the more practical ones just got the students, built those relationships and owned the room, whereas
yeah,
the ones that were more driven by academia were the level was just a little bit too high and they were losing the students. But eventually everyone got to the same
yeah.
point, but you could always tell.
Yeah, definitely. You do need that in science because some jobs in science and STEM are the research, but some jobs in science and STEM are sales
Yeah.
and traveling around and selling kit so that other people, they're all cogs in a network. So whatever your sort of social skills are and whatever your
Mhm.
set of skills are, there's definitely a place for you in STEM.
So, did you ever encounter stereotypes about who STEM is for? And if so, how did they affect your path?
Okay. I always did feel like I'll be honest, as a teenager, I was quite excited by the idea of engineering as opposed
Mhm.
to science. But I always felt like, yeah, I did feel like that was for boys. I did. It was the 90s. I did feel like that was probably more of a job for boys than girls. And it
Yeah.
probably did impact why I didn't go down the engineering route. It is still very male dominated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We were speaking to Dame Chion Wera, who is the chair of the House of Commons for Science and Technology, and she was telling us about her engineering course, which was a little bit before the 90s. She said she was absolutely in the minority, but because she was from this working class background in Newcastle where she was determined to make a difference, she just
Yeah.
stuck it out and completed the course. But she said there were so few women and girls. People always
Yeah.
think girls don't want to get dirty or girls don't want to break a nail, and it's just not true.
I can't remember which scientist it was, but there's a theory about monkeys and bananas, and where you've got a cage of monkeys,
Uh-huh.
and every time the person puts in a banana and a monkey goes for it, they spray the monkeys with water. So
Wow.
then over time, the monkeys learn to like grab down the monkey who goes for the banana so that they don't get sprayed. But over time, they just remove the monkeys. And eventually, what happens is none of the monkeys in there have ever experienced being sprayed by water. But if someone leans up, they just like, and they pull it down.
Oh,
So, what
wow.
that says is people follow patterns, even if after a while they don't even know why. And I suppose that's why it's hard to break. So, like, if people think, oh, they want like a hat for being on site, but they want it to be pink. Like, then that's probably quite tough to break because people don't even know why they think that. They've heard it and they might think it. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but I'm saying I think I can understand why it's hard to break over time.
As a girl child, if you asked me what a scientist was, I wasn't discriminating against myself, but I would have said the guy off the Wheatos box. Do you know that's just what
I would, Professor Wheato, that's exactly what I have in mind. a white bald man in a white, lab coat.
Yeah, with some
Yeah,
goggles
that's
probably. Yeah.
a bit zany.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, going back to the hard hat, I recently was reading about the male and the female anatomy and the gear that people wear on sites, and the fact that it was created around sort of an average man, just like office temperature, what's deemed warm enough was on an average man, because there's got to be a way to do it. Someone's got to pick a way and do it that way.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was predominantly men on a building site. So you get a lot of women now. And even when they're buying the small jackets, the sleeves are far too long and they're having to roll them
Yeah.
up. And, there's probably a niche in the market for us to start making more petite, hard.
I used to have a lab coat, but it was a woman cut lab coat that had like a little nip in at the waist. And I used to love it because when I turned a corner, it'd like swoosh round and it was like a really stylish lab coat.
Oh dear. So, next question. How important have role models and representation been in your own STEM journey?
Wow. I'm going to say it. I don't think I had any female role models.
No,
I
neither did
didn't. There were like maybe a couple of science teachers at school. I had a really nice, kind biology teacher called Mr. Kirby. And he was a brilliant science teacher. And he was just a really good, nice, kind fella. And he was the one who made me like most excited about science. I just really liked him.
And that's interesting because he wasn't a woman, but it was still a person that made you potentially feel like that place was for you. So it doesn't even have to be that we have women role models. We just need allies.
So for me, I'll tell you exactly what it was. He made his lessons really exciting, and you just look forward to his biology lessons. They were brilliant, and I sort of respected him on like a human level because I saw a weakness in the sense that he was diabetic, and in the middle of a lesson he beckoned me and he's like, can you just go down to the canteen and just get me and he gave me like a quid and said, go and get me a Mars bar because I'm feeling a bit like all my sugar levels are all in my mind. It was like it was like an ER situation. I ran around like pelted through the school to get him a Mars bar, and I got it, and then I got told off by another teacher, and I was like, oh, I didn't care. I was the hero of this emergency story, and I ran back with the Mars bar. Sarah, can I ask you who your favourite science teacher was when you were at school, and why were they your favourite science teacher?
Ooh, that is a really difficult one. That is a really difficult one. And I don't know if I actually have an answer to this one because the teaching of science that I had in secondary school, I would say, um, wasn't the level of inspiration that I would hope that secondary school teachers are now. I'm trying to say, I think the teaching of science when I was in secondary school wasn't something that was.
It was boring.
It was boring.
Turn
It
to
was
page
boring.
36 and do the questions. I mean, I look at some of the lessons that I had when I was a kid, and I'll be honest, what it was a science teacher, typically reading from a textbook, writing it on an overhead projector, us copying it down, and that was the lesson. Can you imagine throwing a lesson out like that now?
Yeah.
You'd be on a performance plan before the lesson was finished.
For me, it wasn't massively inspiring as such in my own personal journey.
Which is interesting because now you are doing everything you can to inspire the next generation of scientists.
Yeah.
So you've really took on that challenge.
Good for you.
It's something that I'm so passionate about. I really, really want the next generation to be inspired and enthused by science.
Yeah.
We all talk about it all the time. We all talk about science being everywhere, science being all around us, but we are educating the next generation of oncologists. We are educating the next generation of people that will discover things, create things, find a way that is going to change the world for a really positive place. So if we have a tiny little bit of influence in that, for me, that is a huge driver of why we all do what we do. every single day. And like I say, so it's a little bit different to mine. It's science education wasn't the most inspiring. I don't want people in 10, 15, 20 years to be saying the same thing. I want them to be choosing us and being like,
Yeah.
it was, yeah.
You know, the theme for British Science Week this year is curiosity. And I think that is
Yeah.
probably about the best one they've done yet. Because you
Yeah.
think about children that are in primary school now, they're going to be making discoveries when they're older that we can't even dream of yet. So diseases or things like that.
AI.
And technology that will be able to heal things that are a problem now, but they won't be a problem then. Like, that's just mind blowing, isn't it? That is the I'd almost, you could almost argue that it's the curiosity and the drive to want to figure it out is the big overarching issue. And I think science, a common theme, even despite how perhaps dry some of the lessons were when I was a pupil, that never goes away, does it? You know, that sort of, I call it the eureka moment when you're like, "Ah, yeah, I got it." And the
Yeah.
kids, you could see the penny drop. That's really something special. But it's really different. I don't know if you've ever, because I taught in a special needs school for a while.
Mhm.
And I remember I had to teach some English lessons a week, which I didn't realize how. So to me, you don't reveal the great big conclusion. You let the kids figure it out for themselves, don't you? That's where the excitement is. And I
Yeah.
was teaching this English lesson on there, and there, the different types of there, and there.
Mhm.
And I thought, I was trying to get the kids to like figure out a pattern, and then they could like, I was trying to teach an English lesson, like a science lesson, and then they were like, "Oh," and that's when you use there as in here and there, and that's when you use there as in they are. And I taught, and I was observed, and they were like, "What? Like, what were you? Why wouldn't you just tell them how to do it and then teach them?" I'm like, "Oh, because you don't do it like that in science. It's like you would spoil it." And I was like, "Oh no, I spoiled the English lesson by doing it like a science lesson." So that's why I'm only good for
I don't
science.
I don't think that. I think, again, letting them figure it out, I think that's quite good. And there is a place for telling them, of course. And I do feel your pain with teaching there, there, and there. I have taught it myself. It is
It's awful. It's,
painful.
yeah. Oh, I shudder to think about it. But yeah, no, that wasn't the way to teach it to that particular batch of kids. I don't mind telling you.
With that in mind, can you recall a moment when seeing a woman in STEM made a difference to how you saw your own possibilities?
Yeah. Okay. So when it came to, I guess it would have been year 10, work experience, I applied to the human biology department in the lab at Loughborough University, and I went
Okay.
and worked there for a week, right? And there was a woman who ran that department. I guess she was the lab assistant, and she was in charge of all the freshers, and she got me a lab coat, and she drew me a little timetable of what room to be in, and she really looked after me. And I just saw her, like I was just saying before about you're working in a science lab and you've got all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
Times that by 20 when you go to a university. And she was just walking around all these cool labs. And there was a bit where they were doing dissections, and they had a table with wax in it where you heated it from beneath. And she showed me how you set whatever you were doing a dissection on in the wax. And I
Wow.
just remember how exciting it all was. And it was her that for a whole week, she just immersed me in that whole life. And I was like, yes, she can do it. I can do it. This is what I want. Representation is important. And I do think that if I'd have had more role models, more female role models, then I probably would have flourished more.
Everyone around me who was inspiring me into any sort of STEM field was a man. Like my dad
Mm.
is obsessed with physics, and my dad and my brother used to fix like a scooter and a motorbike in the garage together and like really bond over it. And my dad used to make me brochures about motorbikes. I did German. My dad used to get these brochures about these German motorbikes. Can't remember what they are, but he used to get me those. And yeah, it was a male dominated field, and the sort of, my dad and my brother did it together, but he was always keen to feed it through to me and encourage me to go down that route.
German is a really good language, and quite often you can do chemistry degree with German because a lot of the journals are in German. So German and chemistry often go together very well.
I didn't know that.
Because I did German too.
Did you?
Yeah, but I do French better.
I can read it, but I can't really speak it anymore. What practical steps can educators or leaders take to create spaces where everybody feels encouraged to explore STEM, no matter their background?
Okay, so this is a crucial part of why I actually ended up moving from the lab and getting into teaching. So they used to call it, and we'll have to verify, I don't know if it is still called that, aim higher. And that is so kids from working class backgrounds can visit labs and see jobs that perhaps no one in their family does. And then they can experience it by way of like days out and visits
Mhm.
and things like that. And then they can see. So when I worked at AstraZeneca, I remember, I was like setting up a lab. I was like a helper, if you like, for when all the students came in. And I thought, oh, working in a lab is fun. But all of these teenagers just like being absolute wildlings, I thought that looks like even more fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to work with them. So then the year after, I trained to be a teacher.
I am 99% sure that I was in aim higher, unless it was called, there's been gifted and talented as well, isn't there? But either way, I was one of those students that was picked to be in the group of students whose family had never been to university, but they might be able to go.
Yeah, that's it.
Mm.
Teachers have a responsibility to open the horizons of their kids by whatever means are available to them. But I think teachers are pushed, aren't they? And like doing a
Mhm.
school trip, it's a thankless task because you could potentially
Oh,
lose
yeah.
kids or do a risk assessment, and you're putting your neck on the line if you're a teacher doing a school trip, because the more you do, the more you're culpable for. Like
Yeah.
that is the brass tacks of the situation. But I think if teachers do that, that's really good. Open days are good. If you can get visitors to come to your school, I think that's probably easier than doing that. But I think providing opportunities is really good.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So, to end our episode, then, we like to give listeners one key takeaway. So, what's one idea, perspective, or piece of advice that you'd love listeners to carry with them after this conversation?
Oh, good question. I think the key takeaway is when you're learning anything, it can feel daunting. Like you feel like, oh, I'll never be able to master that, or I'll never be able to get my head around that. And I think particularly science and maths are subjects that kids can feel that with. When you have teachers that are approachable and kind and warm in their demeanour, I think you can really get people to open up and open up to the possibility that it can be for them. And things that seem small, like doing a lunchtime club or showing your passion, because like, for example, a
Mhm.
lot of chemists are into, I don't know, developing their own film or trying different concoctions with like fermenting things. If you allow your passions to come through, I think that is what excites learners. And deviating from the curriculum in other ways, like if you've got a form group and you're a science teacher, you can talk about stuff and really make it come alive. And I think that is how you capture more imagination as you have children in your vicinity.
Oh, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us on this episode.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed speaking to you, Pear, and I really do enjoy reading your blog. So, Ash, I've actually got yours in my newsletter this week.
Hey,
Hey.
thank you.
And thank you to everybody listening in.
Don't forget to follow STEM Conversations wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time for more stories and ideas shaping science, technology, engineering and maths.